be upstanding for His Worship the Mayor.
Noswaith pawb, croeso. Good evening and welcome to this full council meeting on Wednesday the 2nd of May 2018. Please note that this meeting will be recorded for subsequent broadcast via the authority's intranet site. The images and sound recording may also be used for training purposes within the authority. The public seating areas will be in view of the camera, and by entering the chamber and using the public seating area, members of the public are consenting to being filmed and to the possible use of those images and sound recordings as outlined above. First item on the agenda this evening, apologies for absence. Do we have any?
Councillor Chris Barry, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda item number 2, declarations of interest. Members are reminded of their personal responsibility to declare any personal and prejudicial interest in respect of matters contained in this agenda in accordance with the provisions of the Local Government and Finance Act 1992 relating to Council Tax, the Local Government Act 2000, the Council's Constitution and the Members' Code of Conduct. Do we have any declarations of interest? Councillor Jones.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr Mayor. Item number 9, I'm the Chair of the Phosphor-Brand Liaison Committee.
Councillor Lewis.
Item number 9, I'm the Vice Chair of the Phosphor-Brand Liaison Committee.
See a trend here.
Yeah.
Item 9, I'm a member of the committee on the Phosphor Committee.
Councillor Amos.
I'm also a member on the Phosphor Committee.
Councillor Barry.
I'm also a member.
And Councillor Salmon.
Also a member.
Any other members of Phosphor Liaison Committee? No? Thank you. Next item on the agenda is a presentation from Chief Superintendent Belinda Davis from the South Wales Police. So I'll hand over now to Belinda. If you want to press the yellow talk button, Belinda. Thank you.
Good evening. I have to take my glasses off because I can't see with them or without them. I think it's an age thing. Good evening and thank you for the invite this evening. I'm Belinda Davis. I'm the police commander for Merthyr, Rhondda, Cynon and Taff. I've taken up my role here about 6 months ago, having spent 7 years as the commander down in Cardiff. I know that is a swear word and I apologise, but that's where I've come from. I'd like to introduce my colleague this evening, who's Chief Inspector Jason Rees. Between us, we will go through the presentation. Okay, so I was asked to come this evening, give you a quick presentation, because I can talk a glass eye to sleep, so I've been told I have 20 minutes absolutely maximum. Okay, so I've got a timer on my hand which will vibrate. I've been asked to give you an overview of my policing delivery plan, certainly for 2018 and 2019. What I'll do is I will give you a South Wales Police overview. I will then narrow it into Cwm Taff and Merthyr overview. But can I just say, because of the time limits that I've been given, I'm not going to turn it into a corporate pact, so I'm going to openly invite you to either come and see me on an individual basis or invite me back, or certainly come and speak to Jason if you've got any localised issues, because otherwise we will run on, and I'm sure you're all busy. So, taking you into the first slide to give you a little bit of a corporate overview. As you all know, the Police and Crime Commissioner is legally bound to deliver on a South Wales Police and Crime Plan. He has done so, and then that instructs the Chief Constable, Mr Dukes, to provide a delivery plan for that year. What we've done, it's hot off the press. This is the delivery plan for South Wales Police. You can see the detail on there. We are not intent on changing our mission, vision or values, in the sense that we will continue to keep South Wales safe, and we will do so by being the best at understanding and responding to the needs of our communities. What that means then in relation to our values, my values and that of my staff, when we deal with anybody or any issues, we will be proud, professional and positive at all times. And if we are not, then I expect you and your communities to hold us to account. The delivery plan this year is quite succinct, and I won't take you through our organisational priorities, but I'll take you through our operational priorities, and that has been declared as protecting the vulnerable and preventing harm within our communities. And as you see, when I go through some data with you, you can see why that has become the priority. There are some demand categories which I think you will hopefully find interesting this evening, and they are based on 3 elements: crime we deal with on our streets, hidden harms, and non-crime demand, because we are very acutely aware of what our demand looks like and how we then adapt our resourcing levels to deal with it. When I speak about street crime, this refers to the visible offending which actually occurs in the public space. There I'm talking about your traditional crimes which you will see during the daytime economy, the nighttime economy, your drug dealing, your spice, and some of the issues that are localised. Also around county lines, which is very prevalent, which you've heard on the news, and ASB. When I speak about hidden harms, I refer to organised crime, domestic abuse, hate crime, honour-based violence, child sexual exploitation, modern-day slavery, and a lot of the online offences that are not necessarily visible, but we have significant demand when it comes to that. And the non-crime demand for us is absolutely huge, and that refers to vulnerability around mental health and missing people. So what you will see through the presentation is demand is really not just about crime. 28% of our demand is about crime. The rest of it is hidden harm and non-crime demand. Just to give you our report and to give you hopefully some confidence in us, like Iestyn with schools, we have an independent scrutiny from the HMIC, and we are very pleased and very proud that we can come to you today, not like many of our forces, and say we've had a good report. For the efficiency, we've been deemed good, where we are very well understanding in our demand. We use appropriate resources to deal with such demand, and we indeed plan for the future. In relation to legitimacy, what I'm speaking about is we've been good in respect how legitimate we are in relation to our mission and values about keeping South Wales safe and certainly keeping Merthyr safe. And our effectiveness is what I refer to is the force as a comprehensive understanding of vulnerability, and the workforce is well equipped to deal with that. And we've spent some considerable time over the last 12 months ensuring that is the case. Like yourselves, we've been going through 8 consecutive years of austerity. I've given you some stark figures there. We've got a projected gap up to 2022 of £116 million. We've got to make £11 million of that over the next 4 years. But what is pleasing, because of the organisation and the way it's been run, we've already saved £48 million. And I'll give you some examples of what we've done to do that. We've reduced our contact centres and our control rooms to 1. So we've got 1 public service centre which services all of South Wales. We've reduced 16 custody suites across the force, which are very expensive to run, and we've reduced to 4, and they are the Bridewells. And you all know that one of the Bridewells is here in Merthyr. It's a 60-cell complex. We've reduced our estates at the moment by 33%, but there's always ongoing plans to work with yourselves to see if there's any opportunities moving forward where we can sort of look at some asset management and shared premises, because I think that is very valuable in partnership work. We've reduced our fleet by 20%, and the one you'll be keen on is we've reduced staff numbers, as in staff, by 31%, and we've reduced police officer numbers, which you've seen headline news, by 14%. That's really where we are, and I know you are all very much in a similar position when it comes to the financial state. Just a quick infographic there to show you and explain the demand in a little bit more detail. Last year we received over 180,000 emergency calls, and by that mean I mean the 999 system, and over 488,000 non-emergency calls which would have been taken through the 101 system. What that equates to in reality is around 98,000 crimes. Our demand then relates and correlates into over 32,000 arrests and 380,000 incidents. So it's quite some significant demand there. You will be well versed in the fact that throughout South Wales we receive over 18 million visitors a year, which we have to deal with, and there's the vibrant student life, and there are 94,000 students within South Wales at any given time. That's within our footprint, and as you know, with that comes significant challenge. We deal with over 600 events per year. Those are the ones that are generally pre-planned that we can manage. So you come down from your huge events like UCL and those type of events right the way down to smaller localised events. And what we don't calculate there is your pop-up protest type of event, because that really does, particularly in the city, happen on a daily basis. So the interesting facts, South Wales Police currently have the 2,956 police officers of varying ranks. We have 1,873 police staff to support us, and we have 406 PCSOs. That's a reduction of 506 of recent times. Although we're the 8th largest force in the country, we're one of 43, as you know, we're the 7th busiest. So when I say we're busy, there honestly is a reality to it. So I've given you the force context, conscious of time. I'm going to hand to Jason for the next couple of slides as the new Chief Inspector. Number one, to introduce him, but also to give you a localised context of where that demand now sits from a Merthyr perspective.
Okay, thank you everybody. It's a pleasure to be here tonight, and pleasure to be the Chief Inspector in charge of operations in Merthyr. Started in March, so fairly new to the role, but it's a great place to work. So just as the Chief Super said here, just to give some local context to the statistics that she just advised you of, what that means to Merthyr, as you'll see, 5,516 emergency calls, 14,739 non-emergency calls, 5,600 crimes. Census data reveals over 1 million visitors, around about just over 4,500 students. To service that, we have 76 officers between the rank of PC to Inspector, covering not just frontline officers but also specialist departments. Supporting the frontline officers, we have 23 police community support officers, and providing an admin function, we have 14 staff. And it's important to note that that if we had the requirement to do so, we would have wider divisional resources to call upon, as well as force resources, which are obviously of great assistance to us. So, latest census details, we serve a population of 59,100 residents, which is roughly 2% of the Welsh population. Out of the crimes and calls I've just informed you of, we made 3,222 arrests, 17,964 incidents. Not quite the 600 events, so we have 24 events on average each year, but obviously we do have pop-up events, so that can change. And we're currently the 3rd busiest in Northern BCU. Some further statistics here, and we earlier referred to our 3 types of demand, which is crime in our streets, non-crime demand, and hidden harm. So if I focus on crime in our streets first of all, the 36% in the top left there, that is a 30% increase in emergency calls compared to our most similar forces in terms of demographic and community makeup. So we are 36% busier than those forces. The 5% more emergency calls equates to the increase in demand purely for Merthyr in the last year. Moving across the slide, we've got 18% more crimes investigated by our officers. That again is in respect to our most similar force group, and 8% more crimes on last year committed in Merthyr. Non-crime demand, we've touched on a couple of areas here, but mental health, as you're all aware, accounts for a lot of our demand. On average, we have 100 calls a day relating to mental health. They're again, on average, around about 5 of those are in Merthyr, but it equates to about 12% of overall force demand equates to mental health issues. Underneath that, we have 8,500 missing person investigations as a force we investigate each year. 355 of those are within Merthyr. And to put a monetary figure on that, we spend about £8 million a year as a force dealing with missing persons, which is obviously outside of our normal crime. And just moving across there to hidden harm, domestic abuse, 35,800 instances a year as a force we deal with from a domestic abuse perspective, and 2,137 of those are in Merthyr. And again, underneath that there's a rise, 108% increase in rapes and other sexual offences reported since 2013, and in Merthyr that's a very consistent figure. We've got a 116% rise. So looking at the local crime trends, I've picked on 5 of our crime categories there, so I'll talk you through those. Starting with the top, violence with injury. Pleasing reduction there. We've got a minus 3.4% reduction in terms of violence with injury. And I think as a partnership, that doesn't come by chance. I think we work excellently in partnership in Merthyr, through local authority, through private business, through our third sector, in terms of predicting and pre-planning activity in relation to violent offences. And that's a really positive figure there, I think. But violence with injury comes in terms of a number of categories. We've got our nighttime economy within the town centre, which accounts for a proportion of the violence with injury. But we've also got a proportion of violence which occurs in our suburbs as well, which isn't nighttime economy related. So I'm working very hard at the moment to, with our community safety partnership, to ensure there's a review of the violent crime within Merthyr, so we can provide the appropriate response to nighttime economy issues as well as the wider issues across Merthyr, which is prevalent. In terms of sexual offences, there's a small increase there of 5.3%, but I'd like to think within that percentage increase there's a positive we can take, because it takes a lot of trust and confidence to report a sexual offence, and people need to be entrusting of the police to report matters in the first place. So I think that demonstrates a real positive for Merthyr in terms of our ability then to safeguard some vulnerable people. Drug possession, increase of 2.5%. And I think this is one key area, one key category which you really need the support and assistance of our public. A lot of our enforcement and work around drug activity is intelligence led. Without that intelligence, we have obviously a difficult time to enforce, but we need that intelligence and that information. So I would make a plea for people in this room to advise members of the community to report that drug activity whenever they feel the need. In terms of DV with injury, what I've been really impressed with since coming to Merthyr is our relationship with public health in particular, because a lot of the reports of domestic violence with injury, you see there with the 10%, has come from people who have been identified as domestic violence victims, not perhaps through traditional means of reporting to the police. We work very well with our hospitals, which can pick up the signs of domestic violence, and as a partnership we're able to share appropriate data to ensure we capture and we provide the early intervention to domestic violence victims. So that 10% increase again I think can be seen as a positive. And shoplifting, we go up 7.5% in terms of offences regarding to shoplifting, but you'll obviously be aware of the major development now which is going on in Merthyr with Trago Mills. So as a Chief Inspector, I'm extremely sensitive at the moment in terms of the demand displacement and how that might change the shoplifting footprint within the city centre, and that's something which I'll work very closely with my teams to ensure that there's an appropriate policing response across the board, cognizant of the theft offences. But of course, away from crime, we also have quality of life issues which matter a great deal to people, and we're very keen and robust in how we respond to that. So current priorities at the moment, which our communities are telling us are a concern, are antisocial behaviour linked to drug use in the town centre, which we're working hard to reduce. Off-road bike annoyance in Trelewis, antisocial behaviour in Riddicar Leisure Village. We deal with speeding and parking concerns, specifically around vulnerable sites like local schools, and we also continue to receive reports into issues such as fly tipping, which is we work very closely with partners to try and resolve. So that hopefully will give you a flavour of our local policing demands in Merthyr and put some context around the force picture.
Okay, I'm sure that there are lots more that you would, as independent councillors and councillors, would like to add to that list. I have absolutely no doubt, and I'm more than happy to speak to you, as is Jason, outside this meeting. Please come to us, because if you don't tell us, we don't know, we haven't got a crystal ball. And in relation to the spice activity and all the drug-related activity, which is very prevalent in the town centre, I'm also cognizant it's going on in the outskirts as well, and we do require information and some support on intelligence, and we will, I assure you, take the appropriate action. There is a gap in the intelligence. We're working. You've all signed up to the CUMTAF community safety strategy, and you should all be aware of the priorities that are listed within that, and certainly spice is something that we're all looking at. But please make sure that you come to me or my colleagues and advise us. I don't want to sit in a tower where I'm not aware of the information. Hopefully that has given you some context on the demand, the way we manage our demand, how effectively we look at our demand, and how aware we are, acutely aware of the localised problems. And hopefully you will notice that there is a vulnerability aspect that runs through every single element, and that is why you will see vulnerability as our priority. So the question you rightly should ask me is, you've told me a lot of information, you've given me a lot of stats, so what are you going to do about it? How are you going to manage it? And it's quite simple. That slide is effective. I've told you about crime on our streets. I've told you what it is. I've told you about what non-crime demand is. I've told you what the hidden harms are. And I've gone to great lengths to tell you about the demand and some stats. The way we're going to deal with it is in 3 ways. Which has been identified as a way forward for the organisation, and certainly for me locally. So it will be part of my local delivery plan. The first thing will be in partnership. We cannot do it alone. When you think that my demand is only 28% crime, so I cannot do this alone. I will be requiring partners, including yourselves, health, and the usual statutory partners, and certainly third sector, to come along and help us out in relation to that. We will build on the good relationships we've already got through the Public Service Board, which the leader and various other stakeholders sit on. It's really, really important that we shrink together and we do not shrink apart, because if we shrink apart, the public will suffer. And at the end of the day, we are all public servants and here to serve our communities. We will deal through it through prevention, because we can't continue to mend broken adults and can't continue in the cycle of crime. We must tackle it head on, and we must build stronger children for the future. Otherwise we will continue in this vicious cycle of crime, and the cohort of people that keep using my services and newer services are exactly the same. So we will be working as part of the CUMTAF strategy at ACE. I'm sure you've all heard about it. It's the Adverse Childhood Experiences, and that will link to the community zones which you have signed up to as a partnership, which sits as one of the priorities in the PSB. We will also be looking at the peacekeeping activity, which is our activity. And when I say red door activity, some of you will know, and some of you would have seen the visible photographs. It's the big metal key that we use to go through the front door if anyone fails to answer it. And we tend to put it through. I'm sure you will know what I'm talking about. It is important because whilst it unnerves some people, I like to think it unnerves the right people. The people who find it comforting and find it reassuring are the people who've had to suffer the pain and quality of life issues as a result of those individuals or those families. So I will be assuring you here, and that's why I've come here, that we will take positive action. And if we don't take positive action, you have a right, as always, to hold me to account, and I expect you to do so. So we will be intelligence-led. You will see visible activity moving forward across CUMTAF, but certainly with Jason here in Merthyr. So hopefully I've given you an overview of what I'm facing. I need your help, I need your support. We must work in partnership. But I would also given you an overview of my commitment into dealing with some of the localised issues and the priorities for us as an organisation, and indeed a partnership around vulnerability and preventing harm out in our communities. So I'm conscious of the time. I'm hoping I haven't gone over it too long. I have no issues with questions, but I'm conscious of your time. But what I would like, if you've got issues locally, because your communities will have issues, I need to know about them. And I give you all an open invite to come and speak to me. I'm more than happy to meet you, come to you. And Jason is exactly the same. So can I just say once again, thank you very much for your time this evening, and thank you very much for the invite.
Thank you, and Belinda, to the insightful presentation. Does anybody have any questions? Yeah,
Mr. Mayor, can we ask questions?
certainly.
I'm Bill Smith from the Goodness. I got the problem with the present moment. We get an officer in, and we went up 3 officers in for about 7 months, 8 months, and before they turn around, they move somewhere else. So the ward feels you're not on consistency with the police. So every time you come up, there's something new. So how can we guaranteed that the officers will stay there a bit longer and not moved on? I know you can't guarantee it, but I'd like to know if an officer there for about 6 months, because they get to know these people, right? And we've got a big drug issue, and how we deal with it is constantly with the police. How do we deal with that?
Okay, happy to take that question. You're right. We are inherently known for moving our staff around. And what we're trying to find with continuity will be through the neighbourhood teams, because you will get more continuity there. It's quite difficult because as a police service we must upskill and keep skilling our staff. But what we can do is try to provide you, particularly in the more deprived areas, with some continuity when it comes to the PCSOs, because that's where a lot of the work and the information comes from. There's an ongoing neighbourhood policing review within South Wales, so that we're going to have a look at a more integrated model moving forward to deal with problems such as inherent drug use, as in it is in the Goodness. Because we've got a commitment from our Chief Constable, whereas some forces have dropped out, to make sure that we're now looking to reduce our commitment to neighbourhood policing. It actually costs us £22 million a year to keep a neighbourhood policing team across South Wales Police, but we are actively committed to it, Bill. And what I will say is we are looking at utilising our resources in neighbourhood policing a lot more effectively and efficiently than we are doing. They're doing a great job, but with austerity the way it is and increasing demand, we have to be more efficient and effective. And so what we're going to do is review that, and hopefully we'll provide you with some consistency, and your colleagues here. So that's sort of the commitment. But there will be an element of movement when it comes to the police officers, because that's the nature of police officer business, but the continuity will come from your PCSOs.
Councillor Jones?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question is in relation to some of the figures that you've given, and I've written down you've got 2,956 officers at present in the South Wales Force, 76 police officers in this particular area. Now, police officers are very important as far as any police force is concerned, and this present and preceding Conservative government has decreased the number of police officers, certainly I think in England and Wales, by well over 20,000. What is the minimum number of officers that are required for all of the issues that you deal with on a day-to-day basis in South Wales, and obviously in Merthyr Tydfil in particular?
I accept your point, and I won't make any political comment, as you will understand, for the uniform that I wear. But what I will say in relation to the decrease in numbers, we have reduced in South Wales from around about 3,300 to where we are now. And actually we did at one point go down to 2,800. But it's been recognised that as and when we can, we will increase. To give you sort of basic figures of what we actually required, you know, as a commander, I could give you a ridiculous figure to tell you what I need in order to deal with the demand, but I have to be pragmatic with the numbers that I've got. We always need more, and you know, I can't sit here and say that we don't, because the more we have, the more we can deal with, and the better we cope with our demand. However, we have what we've got, and I know the organisation is constantly trying to bridge the gap, because we've got that funding gap, deal with the demand. That's why the partnerships are important. So to give you actually baseline figures, I can't. To tell you what we actually need, I can only tell you what I've got and the best use that I will make of what I've actually got. But if you're asking me as a commander, and I say with a wry smile, I'll always have more if there's more available.
Councillor Amos.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. What I'd just like to ask is, I went to a community meeting on Monday, and one of the questions that was raised, and it's been raised a number of times, was the fact that there is now a marked decrease in the number of officers, whether they police officers or PCSOs, around the area. That was something of a reassurance to people in the past. There is a lot of crime, which is such as minor crime, I would call it, antisocial behaviour, motorbikes, scrambler bikes, drinking around the corners, you know. If you could give us some sort of reassurance to take back to our communities on that score of, you know, the bobbies on the beat then, so to speak.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. The visibility of police officers and police community support officers does give reassurance to the local area, and similar to what Chief Superintendent Davis has just referred to, you know, we try and maximise the use and presence of police officers and PCSOs wherever possible. So I will do my utmost as the Chief Inspector in the local area to ensure that we can deploy resources based on intelligence-led policing and based on demand, so we can maximise their visibility in your area. And of course, as we said earlier, I welcome a meeting with you to discuss how we can do that. Cheers.
Councillor Jago.
Thank you. A great presentation, lots of information, lots of performance data, and I appreciate, you know, performance stats is what we all work towards. With regards to the stats, so in terms of meeting the needs, would you know whether or not your telephonist system is able to track calls into 101 that are unanswered, i.e. the residents hang up because of the lengthy waiting times? The reason I ask this is that we reintroduced packed meetings down in Bedlinog and Trelewis when we became elected councillors. We've got very low attendance, but when we speak to residents in the community and say, look, we know there's things going on, we know there's garage burglaries, we know there's incidences with cars and drink driving, etc. When we do ask them to report these, so we get a record of what's going on in the local communities, one of the biggest answers we get is that the waiting times on 101 is too long. A fortnight ago, one lady had an incident in the street and she hung up after 25 minutes. So I'm just wondering whether or not your system is able to collate that data to show, you know, the real numbers that are actually ringing, and some people just simply get fed up.
There certainly is, for the 99 system, a way of doing that, and there's certainly from our public service centre a way of doing that. I will go away and I will check on the 101 system, because it is one of many complaints that we do receive. So I'll take that away and I'll come back to you personally. In relation to PACT, out of interest, PACT is always subject to some discussion. Some people, it's a bit like Marmite, some people love it and some people absolutely detest it, saying it's totally ineffective, it doesn't work. What I will do is I'll come out and I'll get the Chief Inspectors to come and speak to you to see how valuable you find PACT, and I'll review it. We started to look at it because sometimes it can be personality driven, where the same people turn up, and actually it's not necessarily for the right reasons. And we are open to discussion on any alternative that you think would suit your individual needs. We're very conscious that there is a gap in relation to your online type of PACT, so we're looking at your Google PACT to see if we can capture that element of the community. Sometimes they don't want to leave their homes if they've been out all day, and they don't want to go to a PACT meeting to leave someone else, but they would like some interaction. So we've got some work ongoing in relation to that. So please, if you or your communities have got any ideas or suggestions, I'm opening it up to conversation. Because where PACT is working, I'm more than happy for it to remain. Where it's not working, it's wasting everybody's time. But it will not be removed until we put another option in place. Yeah.
Councillor Goldbrown.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, thank you for the presentation. It was very informative. Like Councillor Jago said, there was a lot of information in there. But one thing that struck me, on the local crime trends slide, 2017, you had drug possession down as 201. Given the scale of the drug problems we see around, that seemed very low. So I wondered if you could give a bit more context to the figure that 201 represents.
Yeah, absolutely, and I'm not naive to think that's perhaps an accurate figure of the scale of the problem. But as I touched on in that particular crime category, I think that's one specific area where we really need the assistance of local people and communities to report concerns and report incidents, because that figure, when we have the right intelligence, when we have the right information, we act on that, and obviously deal with it proportionately and appropriately. So whether it's drug possession or any crime category, you know, the figures we have only accounts for the number of offences we know about. There's always a narrative behind that which we need to look at, and 201 is what we know about. It could go higher, I'm sure, with the right information, right intelligence.
Anyone else for any further questions? Councillor Rogers.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I enjoyed the presentation from Chief Superintendent and Chief Inspector. So you'll be glad to know most of the question was taken up by my colleague. I chair the Pant Community Group. It's the only active open meeting every month in Pant, in Dowlas. There's only one there. So what I've always cropped up, just a second, and I'll say, it's always cropped up is the lack of police presence. But it has improved a lot, I must be honest. So what I'd like to ask is, you know, if it's possible, there's an open invitation every month, the last Monday of the month. Well, it'll be brought forward now because of bank holiday. There's an open invitation for police or support officers to come along. But 99% of the time we don't see them, you know. So it would be lovely, and they're not going to make it all occasions because they've got other priorities. I accept that. But what I'm saying is it would be lovely to come along to save us answering in the third degree, you know. If somebody's actively there, they can answer, you know. So what I would ask you is in your good office, if you've got the opportunity to send one along now again, and if you can't make it every time, I won't moan, but it'd be lovely if they come, and it'd be very, very welcome. It's a Pant Community Group, last Monday of the month in Pant School. Starts 5:30, be there early because there's big crowds. But, so, thank you very much. That would be lovely if you could do that. That then would be helping with our community. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. If I can make it myself, I will, the next one. If not, obviously, then I'll make sure that my teams are there whenever they can.
The next meeting is on the 21st because of the bank holiday, but then it follows, okay?
Okay, no problem.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Salmon.
I'd just like to point out to Councillor Rogers that we have a PACT meeting every month in Dowlas and Pant, and he's more than welcome to attend. It's in the paper that gets delivered, and our leaflet gets delivered as well.
Councillor Jones.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much for an excellent presentation. I have a query. I'm told that PCSOs in other areas have increased powers above what they have in Merthyr. Is that correct, and is there a reason for it?
In relation to South Wales Police, no, quite simply. The leader, Mr O'Neill, has asked me that, and what I've said is I will take it back as representation to the Neighbourhood Policing Review for consideration with the new Chief Constable. The previous Chief Constable had his stance in relation to it, which it was supported, but I've certainly agreed in a previous meeting with the leader to take that back and put it into the debate around neighbourhood policing, to see where that is going. And I know I was in a recent meeting with the leader and the Crime Commissioner, and again we discussed that point. It can be a bit of a moot point, but that doesn't mean to say it's off the table, and I won't raise it on your behalf.
Councillor Skinner.
It was just a question on one of the statistics this year. I know last year compared to the year before, and it was the domestic violence one. I think it was plus 10% increase, which is obviously really alarming for all of us, and quite clearly more of a societal issue, and doesn't land just on your door. So with that in mind, I wondered what sort of support you guys are getting from Welsh Government to tackle that issue. And secondly, second question of that is, have you seen a year-on-year increase, or was that just a one-off this year?
Domestic violence, as it comes under the vulnerability, is one of our priorities, as you would explain. Yes, we do get a significant amount of support from Welsh Government. This is one of the drivers in relation to the support, and we get a lot of partnership work in relation to it. The 10% increase is year on year in respect of what my colleague was saying about public health, because what we get is a lot of under-reporting of domestic violence, which is really, really alarming and really, really concerning. So one of the priorities that you will see in the plans are, preventing violence against women and young girls. And we got a significant amount of work, which I would really be pleased to sort of invite you in and come and have a look at what we're doing. And again, offer you if you have any suggestions as usual, but there is a significant amount of work, money and energy and drive going into dealing with domestic violence, because it's very prevalent. And I would say to you that 10% is minor in what probably is ongoing out there. It is an awful lot of under-reporting together with, it's part of the hidden harms, it's under-reporting together with child sexual exploitation, honour-based violence, hate crime. They're all very much under-reported.
Councillor Davis.
It's regarding sexual violence. Like you said, not many people, not so many women are going forward, and because it's it's a big deal going forward. Do you speak to other third sector organisations like New Pathways to find out their stats that are taking self-referrals in and not reporting to you?
Yeah, absolutely. We've got a multi-agency safeguarding hub, which you will use us using the acronym MASH. It's Cwmtaf. It's based in Pontypridd, and Cwmtaf was the first pilot, and it's now being rolled out across South Wales Police. I would like to invite you, if you would like to come and see that. We've done varied presentations for people into the MASH, from Welsh Government right the way through. People across the country come and see how it's working, and you will see how we integrate with our partners and we work alongside them, and it prevents delays going out. So if we've got to put a referral in, so someone's got to be signposted for support, or actually we've got a safeguarding issue with any of the children or any family members, it's immediate. We don't delay anything now via waiting for someone to pick up a phone or for a next meeting the next day. We're sitting opposite colleagues and we actually deal with it. And again, quite genuinely, there's an open invite. People often regularly come and have a look and see how our MASH is working. Please link with Jason and we can arrange that anytime. It really, really is an interesting visit, and it's an eye-opener to see some of the hidden harm that actually goes on in my community and your community.
Any other questions? Councillor Thomas.
It's great to see Belinda back in Merthyr, and I for one are far more confident now that you're here where we go in with the police in the future. I met with Jason recently, and again it was refreshing to have you in a meeting. Yeah, it was really good. So wish you all the best now in your new roles.
Any further questions? No. Jason and Belinda, I'd like to say thank you very much for that insightful presentation. Thank you. Thank you. The music stops. Everybody found their chairs? Okay, next item on the agenda. Item number 4 is a notice of motion with regards to council tax financial assistance available. Councillor Roberts.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The Council notes that council tax bills have recently been distributed through the letterboxes of homes across Merthyr Tydfil with an increase of 4.15%. It is therefore vital that all residents know what financial assistance is available to them. The Council will therefore join the Welsh Government and a host of charities to make people more aware of the range of support that is available to them to help pay their council tax bills. The Council will highlight that some council taxpayers may be entitled to pay less council tax if they believe they live on a low income, they live alone, or with children who do not pay council tax, they are a student, they are disabled, they are mentally impaired, their property is empty. The Council resolves A, that Merthyr Tydfil County Borough Council will play a full part in the awareness raising campaign, and B, the Council will publicise a full list of eligibility criteria on the local authority website, through the Contact magazine, and regularly on the Council social media pages. I move. Thank you.
Can I second that motion, please? Thank you, Mr Mayor. As one of the most economically deprived areas in Wales, this local authority has a duty to stand up for the most vulnerable and those in need. We cannot, therefore, let down those who are finding it difficult to pay council tax. Many different factors will determine if someone is eligible for council tax support. This includes income, age, a disability, the type of benefit being received, or who they live with. Consequently, there may be a number of people who do not realise that assistance is available and are missing out on an opportunity to reduce their liability to council tax. It is paramount that this authority does its utmost in ensuring that those who are eligible for assistance are made aware, and therefore vital that this information is consistently publicised through every possible source of media available to the local authority.
Thank you, Councillor Lewis. Do we have any questions? No? No questions? Any comments? Councillor Jago.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just to say that a lot of us are already doing this, and is something that's very welcomed. Welsh Government introduced this campaign from April this year, asking everyone to look at the information available on the gov.wales/council tax help website. On there, what they've actually got is a self reference tool. So you say if you're unemployed, if you're working, if you've got an empty property, and it'll go through the different range of questions with you, and then determine whether or not you are entitled to support. That campaign has been released by Welsh Government, and hopefully these posters will be up within our communities, so we can actively promote this. As the local authority's anti-poverty champion, I'm certainly doing this, and it's been shared today on my page. And if anybody wants further information on where you can get the leaflets and the information from, then I'm more than happy to share that as well.
Councillor Amos.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just to say I totally agree with this motion. I congratulate Councillor Barry and Councillor Roberts for bringing it forward. Just one comment and observation. Shouldn't this sort of information have been sent out with council tax demands? Or is there a reason why that can't be done?
It's a question, Julian. We don't comment.
Oh, sorry. I am surprised it was not sent out with council tax demands.
Councillor Barry.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. We welcome and support this motion as an independent administration. If we take a few moments to clarify for members, those who are aware, some may not be, of the current marketing activity that goes on with council tax. All council tax reminder letters have the back of the letter partner, complementary organisations and charities listed to give further support and advice. Our actual council tax notification letters have council tax discounts and reductions listed. Directions for further information are website, telephone numbers, additional information about the notification, data sharing statement. We have hard copies available, contact with the revenue section, and obviously both in Welsh and English. Welsh Government, as Councillor Jago related to, have an initiative where 10,000 leaflets are to be sent out for those with arrears, giving guidance and help available, and they're currently with us. Our online services list council tax first on the contact. There are 9 headings of assistance, which include disabled band reductions, discounts, exceptions in relation to property, reductions on low income, difficulty paying outside of those listed, renewal entitlement to reduction. An information booklet is available. Not that we have any legislative responsibility to do a booklet since 2014. In addition, revenues are worked up with comms ideas such as banners on websites, links to partner organisations and charities, social media platforms, Facebook messages with links to council tax relief payments, Twitter messages, SMS direct messages, opening direct links to support on customers' mobile phones, the Contact magazine with regular articles, more at April when the council tax letters are going out. The council tax revenue support we received for 16-17 totaled 5.718 million. Our actual spend in support was 5.923 million. We spent an additional 205,000 in support of our clients out there. So I think members can clearly see there's a massive support mechanisms in place, with new ones being developed as our digital platforms become more prominent. If anyone has any additional suggestions in terms of how we should reach our clients out there with this support, they'd be more than welcome. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Any further comments? No? Can we put that to the vote then, please? Thank you, everyone. That motion has been carried. Next item on the agenda, item number 5, is to approve as accurate the minutes of the following meetings. They're listed as 5A through to 5L. Can be found on pages 7 through to 48. And Sander Lead has taken this.
I move the accuracy of those minutes.
Do we have a seconder? And can we put that to the vote then, please? Lovely, that's been carried. Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is number 6, is the pay policy statement to consider the report of the Chief Executive. Can be found on pages 49 through to 68. Councillor Barry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have the annual pay policy statement. We're required by legislation to prepare an annual statement covering senior staff and lower paid members of staff alike. The statement requires approval of full council. The only addition this year is the inclusion at 6 of the gender pay gap. The gap with the authority at present stands at 5.32%. Other authorities are slightly higher. The UK average is 18%. The reasons are typically historical. You'll see at 8.3 that there are no discrimination. There's no pay discrimination using our equality proof job evaluation mechanism. The financial implications are budgeted for. I'll take the recommendations. 2.1, the pay policy 2018-20 be implemented from the 1st of April 2018, be approved.
I second that motion.
Do we have any questions? Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Could I ask on top of page 58, a question in relation to the real living wage increase and the real living wage was introduced by the last Labour administration. It refers there that the hourly rate will increase to 8.25 with effect from the 1st of April 2016. But having carried out a check, the current figure, I think, is £8.75, and it refers to Appendix A. But if you look at Appendix A, there's no reference there to the living wage. But the least amount there is on grade 1 of £9 and a penny. So perhaps Mr Ashton could clarify the matter.
Thank you for your question, Councillor. I can confirm that we paid the foundation living wage, which is above the basic living wage. Unfortunately, the paragraph at the top of 58 is a typo, so I'll correct that to reflect the current rate, but we pay above the national living wage.
And as far as you know, then it's 8.75, not more than that?
Yes, but like I say, we pay the foundation living wage, which is above the national living wage. Other authorities, in terms of their pay policy, will need to pay a higher percentage for the bottom end of the scale. We don't, because we go above and beyond that.
Any other questions? No? Any comments? No? Could we put that to the vote then, please? Thank you, everyone. That vote is carried. Next item on the agenda, number 7, is focus on my performance staff. To consider the report of the Chief Executive, can be found on pages 69 through to 90. Councillor Barry.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The essence of the report is that the authority's workforce is highly valued, skilled and certainly diverse. To adhere to the principles of the Statement of Wellbeing and focus on the future report brought to Council 20th of March 2018, it is this report and stress management results from 2017 that highlighted demands, change and specifically manager support being amongst areas causing stress that the focus on my performance scheme has sought to address during this report. The scheme is not ideal in its current format. It is resource intensive and somewhat dated in its approach. However, the principle we believe is sound. The intention is to use more of a digital platform, hopefully from July 2018, when Frontier's HR21 system, or HR system, is upgraded, allowing more flexibility to integrate the performance measurement. Particular recommendations, of which there's just one at 2.1, the focus on my performance scheme and accompanying documents be approved. I move it.
I second the motion.
Do we have any questions? Councillor Jones.
Could I ask a question on page 79, and it's towards the top of the page under the heading, how often will my performance review take place? And the first sentence there reads, it is recommended that all managers undertake one-to-one meetings every 4 to 6 weeks. Could I ask how often they take place at the moment? And do you think that an awful lot of staff will be tied up every 4 weeks when they perhaps in the main should be doing a lot of other duties?
Thank you, Councillor. At the moment, the one-to-one meetings vary. We track the one-to-one meetings through the HR21 HR system. Some managers will meet with their staff fortnightly, weekly, some 4 weeks, which is an average, some perhaps longer. As Councillor Barry mentioned, we undertook a stress survey last year and that identified that the 3 main reasons for stress among staff were management support, change management and increasing demands on their role. We're hoping that this scheme will help to add further clarity to staff in terms of their expectations for the year. As I mentioned, in terms of one-to-ones, it does vary.
Just to clarify then, through you, Mr Mayor, it is at present, on average, every 4 weeks.
Like like I say, it varies across departments and approaches will be different. That's the recommendation. We recommend that there's communication on an ongoing basis, whether that be a one-to-one or a team meeting. The scheme is not to add any additional resource burden to either the employee or to the manager. It's just to provide further clarity. We're not being prescriptive either about the 4 to 6 weeks. We mentioned that one-to-ones are a good idea so that staff have the opportunity to discuss their performance with the manager, but it can be, it doesn't have to be 4 to 6 weeks.
Could I, sorry, got one last question. Could I ask, has this report been discussed with all the appropriate trade unions, and have you received feedback through the members to this?
Yes, I sent the report to trade union colleagues prior to being considered tonight and asked for comments. I didn't receive any written comments from trade unions. There was a meeting this afternoon where again I invited all trade unions to give me comments. Their concern was about the amount of time that it might take for a manager to do appraisals with staff. My view personally is that I see that as an investment of time. Through having clarity, staff then feel connected into achieving the vision for the department, so there were no other concerns mentioned other than that one.
Any other questions? Councillor Skinner.
Yeah, it was a couple of questions, Jeremy. Just on, if I could refer you to 3.6, where you mention about other models that have been used in the past, and the value hasn't been recognised and they haven't sort of been used as effectively as they could be. Am I right? So I just wondered, how will you prevent that from happening with this particular model, first of all?
Yes, before we put the report together and the accompanying documentation, we invited staff and managers to focus groups. And there were a number of discussions as well with colleagues on the corporate management team. We've looked at previous schemes and we've looked at what's worked well and what hasn't. And we've tried to simplify it as much as possible. So the form itself is based on 2 pages, but for me, the appraisal is not the form, it's the conversation. The conversation is the important part. And as Councillor Barry mentioned, we're looking to make that online. So we have received all the feedback. The appraisal scheme is not as complex as other schemes. So other schemes and other organisations will traditionally include a rating scale or a rating scheme. There's no rating scheme with this. It's more about setting clarity.
That sort of leads me to my next question, really, and bear with me because it's a bit long-winded, but it's just to give a little bit of context, because I agree with you, Jeremy, in as much as it is important to meet at least every 4 to 6 weeks, because particularly if you look at the more negative aspects of performance management, and that's my point really, is this is very good, and it's very good when relating to staff who are performing well and when we want to invest in staff, but I would have expected to see something along the performance management side of things, because these things often go hand in hand. So I suppose my question is, one, why wasn't that included in terms of what are we doing? So if we've followed this process correctly and we've invested the time and we've invested the training and we've done everything, but we've got a member of staff who is still underperforming, what are we doing in terms of performance indicators, performance management plans, and you know, and how are we as a local authority improving on that area to complement this, because you can't have one without the other?
Thank you, Councillor. The report touches on capability. The reason why there's not a lot of information in there about capability is because we have a separate policy on capability, which is outside of performance management. So performance management should be a regular process whereby people have objectives and they receive feedback. And we're asking employees as well to lead the meeting and to discuss with their managers in line with our values, what's worked well and what hasn't. In terms of capability, we have a separate policy on that, and we're looking at revising that shortly as well. If there are concerns regarding an employee's performance, we ask managers to deal with it informally as soon as possible. Nothing should come as a surprise. And in terms of the performance management scheme, we wouldn't want managers to hold the information until the next performance management meeting. It should be dealt with then and then in accordance with the capability policy.
Yeah, I just wonder though how the two will complement themselves in the future, Jeremy. So I understand obviously they need to be separate, because they're 2 very different objectives then. But I just wonder in terms of monitoring the effectiveness of any new programme, you can only monitor if you look at the whole picture. So if you would expect to see, if this works really well, you would expect that then to maybe impact on your capability figures and vice versa maybe. So I just wonder if when you look at the capability that we don't lose sight of that, because they do need to work in harmony. Thank you.
Yeah, our approach to capability is to deal with it informally. So the performance, focus on my performance will help to demonstrate that if there are concerns regarding someone's capability, there's a plan that's put together and the plan is reviewed by the individual and the manager. That can lead into capability, but as I mentioned, our focus really is in terms of developing talent for the future and succession planning.
Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Can someone clarify for me if I'm correct in assuming from the report that no staff member will be excluded from this proposal? I do have a couple of follow-ons.
Thank you, Councillor. The scheme is open to all staff.
Thank you for that. In the previous report, we were told that there are circa 1,000 employees of the council. So, taking the longer time of 6 weeks between meetings, and there being 8 6-week period in a year, we'd have to provide cover for 2 members of staff, the manager and the employee, which equates to 2 by 1,000 by 8, which is 16,000 man-hours a year. If we take the shorter period between meetings, then there'll be 12 4-week periods in a year. So the calculation becomes 2 by 1,000 by 12, which is 24,000 man-hours a year. How is this going to be covered, and where would the funding come from? How would the individuals be covered, and where would the funding come from?
As I mentioned earlier, the 4 to 6 weeks is a guideline. What's important is that we're not asking managers to do it every 4 to 6 weeks. We're asking for there to be regular two-way communication. That doesn't need to take the form of a formal one-to-one meeting. It could be a team meeting or a chat over coffee. It's just making sure that all staff are aware of their obligations, their objectives, and can prioritise. In terms of the scheme, I would expect the next stress survey that we're going to undertake later this year to show that the 3 areas identified around demand management, support and change management to reduce through the introduction of this scheme.
But that's not what it says all the way through the report. In the manager's briefing, it says every 4 to 6 weeks. It repeatedly says 4 to 6 weeks throughout the report.
Can I just answer that? You seem to be working on the basis that this isn't happening currently. This is a process that is formalising an arrangement which was introduced some 4 or 5 years ago for these one-to-one meetings. And what happened was they've sort of relaxed a little bit. So what we needed was a proper process that brings them back into a formal procedure. But it's not an increase in people's time because those processes are already being followed. It's simply formalising the way in which it's done.
Again, go back to the original point. Even if it's at the longer period, how is this going to be? How are the managers going to be covered, especially in certain areas? And where is the money going to be found for it? For the sake of argument, an operative on a waste vehicle, who covers for him when he's got to come off his truck?
It's already part of the regular basis of how we're working. So nobody's finding any money for anything extra. All that's happening is we're formalising a process which already exists.
Saying that there will be no additional costs to the authority for implementing this policy.
Yes, that's exactly what we're saying.
Any other questions? No. No more questions? Any comments, please? Councillor Skinner. No. Any Councillor Davis.
I haven't declared my interest, but I don't work for this authority. But as someone who works in local government, I welcome the opportunity to sit with my manager and to review my performance. I think it's as a good employer, it's something we should offer to all our staff, regardless of whether it's 18,000 hours, 24,000 hours. The best resource we've got in this local authority is our staff, and we need to be ensuring we've got the time to sit with them to discuss performance, discuss training opportunities, discuss progression. If we don't do that, we don't get the best workforce and we don't get best services delivered to the people of this county borough. So I, you know, absolutely, you know, think it's a fantastic report. What the monitoring officer said is just formalising what's already in place.
Councillor Skinner.
Yeah, I will have a comment actually. It was just to say that, because it would be rude not to, just to say that, you know, if there's a concern around cost, the cost of not effectively investing and managing our staff will cost us as a local authority much, much more than sitting down with them every 6 weeks, investing in them, if there's issues, addressing them there and then. Performance management, there is nothing more costly than carrying staff that were not performing properly. So this is, in my opinion, a very good thing to be doing.
Councillor Jago.
Thank you. Both councillors have just said what I was going to say. Basically, being a local, not working in this local authority, but working in local authority for 15 years, I certainly welcome that structure. It is a strong support for individual members of staff, and long term, it does save money through the reduction in sickness.
Any other comments? Leader.
Yeah, I've had the benefit of working in an organisation that did a similar structure. We found the time to do it, and bear in mind the organisation I worked in, we weren't sat behind a desk. The outcomes, the positive outcomes, far outweigh the limited administrative burden. I feel some of the questions were posed by some people who have no understanding whatsoever. I question where those questions actually come from and what motivated them. Thank you.
And can we put that to the vote then, please? Thank you. That motion is carried. Next item on the agenda, number 8, is the privacy standard policy and supporting policies. To consider the report of the Chief Executive, can be found on pages 91 through to 144. Councillor Barry.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The report covers the Council's response to the General Data Protection Regulations, GDPR regulations, in relation to the standards policy, consent policy, data protection breach policy, subject access procedures. These policies and procedures relate to staff and all members of the authority, and we have until the 25th of May this year to be compliant. The policies and procedures apply to workers, contractors, agency workers, consultants, directors, as well as staff and all members of this chamber. We are voting to delete, amend, add and substitute various legislation to enable compliance. There are no financial implications mentioned within the report, however, should we fall foul of this legislation. In paragraph 4, paragraph 4 may look substantially different. Training took place with Lisa on the 24th of April, with further training event arranged for the 9th of May in this council chamber at 4 p.m. This is mandatory training, as councillors under this legislation are considered data collectors. And when the new regulations commence in just over 3 weeks, the legislation is very different to what has gone before. Now, you may have been inundated with a flurry of activity from all sorts of organisations through your mobile phones, laptops, PCs, etc. Safe to say, all organisations are facing what this authority is currently facing. There is considerable concern from members at this late time, this late date in the day, with the training, and worries over implementation by both councillors and staff. To that end, I'll take you to the recommendations and ask Caris to perhaps clarify some issues on the late training, the implementation strategy, the different generic IT solutions we could possibly look at to ease the burden for perhaps members going into the future. So I'll take you to the recommendation at 2.1, that the privacy standards policy and supporting policies be approved with immediate effect and for them to become fully operational policies as of the 25th of May 2018. I move.
I second that motion.
Yes, and Mr Mayor, before you take questions, perhaps if I can just comment as invited by Councillor Andrew Barry. This is an enormous piece of legislation. There are huge implications for all of you, and you will have seen that the financial consequences of failing to comply are equally enormous. As a council, you have been extremely proactive in dealing with this, and those of you who were here will remember that towards the end of 2016 you received your first report, that you agreed to appoint Lisa Richards as the Data Protection Officer, as you were required to do. But in Lisa, I know she looks like she's a swan gliding along. There's an awful lot of activity going on, and she has been working since that time to put us in the position where I would say we are probably one of the best placed local authorities to deliver this. And that even though you may be feeling rather overwhelmed by what you heard in your training and what you see here, you really are much better placed than an awful lot of other organisations. In order to present these documents to you and to provide you with the training, what happens when legislation comes into effect is that you then have to await the guidance and regulations that will underpin it, that enable staff to draft all of the policies and procedures. There's little point in doing that before you get the guidance because you don't know what may be included in the guidance. What Lisa has had to do is wait for that guidance and now, in fact, issue some procedures in advance of it being completed. So she's based that on the legislation rather than guidance because it simply isn't done yet. What is supposed to come out of government hasn't been produced. So you are ahead of the game because you have those policies and procedures. You have more training booked, and I circulated to the leaders of each of the groups just 2 weeks ago that Lisa is quite happy to do workshop training, to do more one-to-one training. In the pack, you've got some basic forms which will be part of what you'll need to do, and we need to make sure that those are available to you electronically so that when you're out and about you can use them as you need to. But I think my point in general, therefore, is that whilst this may feel overwhelming, number one, yes it is, but that's because that's the size of the legislation, and number two, you are, as an authority, very well placed to deal with it, and there will be lots of support and training available to you to assist. Now, I'm not going to pretend to answer any technical questions that you've got because Lisa is more than capable of doing that and has come back here today to do that. But I hope that assists by way of preliminary before you deal with any questions in debate.
And we open up to questions. Councillor Jones.
Well, thank you for that, but I attended the training and there were questions asked from all political levels about it, and there is, as Councillor Andrew Barry has intimated, concern. I read these documents. There is no mention, well, I'll put it as a question. Why isn't, it refers to staff, why isn't councillors referred to in this report? Because I can't see the word councillors in there at all.
It refers to council personnel, and within the definition of council personnel, it includes members.
I personally feel that they should specifically state staff and councillors. Accept what you're saying if that's the definition, but it seems a bit of a grey area, frankly.
Councillor Jones, that's the statutory definition. So that when I've said already that what Lisa is doing is trying to provide documentation that complies with what the statute requires, that's the statutory definition.
Any other questions? No more questions? Any comments? Councillor Jones.
Well, you are right, Caris. This is going to have far-reaching implications for all of us. And what went on before was one thing, but there seems to me to be more onus on elected members on this issue than I've ever seen before. And frankly, Mr. Mayor, I think we all need protection, because when you're implementing an amended act, things can happen. And there are people out there who are only too willing to trip any councillor of whatever party on issues like this. And frankly, I think until we get reassurances that we've got that protection, I think, and I know other members share it, we feel vulnerable on the matter.
Councillor Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just like Councillor Jones and another 13 members, I was part of the training last week, I think it was? Yeah, last week. Time moves so fastly, doesn't it? Quickly, rather, fastly. I welcome the comment from the monitoring officer on the support and the training, because that's going to be crucial with this. It's a big learning curve for everybody, the authority included. And you know, we will support the authority in every shape or form with this, because we need to support ourselves as well. So whatever it takes to get it sorted as the quickest opportunity as possible, we will support that.
Any other further comments? Leader, please.
I too was at the training. It was a good delivery, and it's a wide scope to deal with. There was concerns across the piece, but what I've done since was research the matter, speak to Caris, and get to the root of issues really. And I welcome the workshops, because the simplicity, for my view and my group, is that we want an IT solution and a paper solution that, like Clive, I agree, protects us, but also there's a storage element in relation to the data, both IT and paper. And yeah, there's a little bit more industry involved as well. There's a responsibility upon some of us who already do this to store those contacts and also get some confirmation of those contacts. So I think there's a bit of work and a bit of direction we're looking for on how we capture that IT solution and that paper solution, because many of the people we deal with are not in the IT world. So I think that's the sort of workshop we're looking for, so we can be clear. What are we required to do? How do we protect ourselves, and how do we manage that record afterwards?
And can we put that to the vote then, please? Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. That vote has been carried. Next item on the agenda is item number 9. Everybody? Yep. This item is the Phosphorus Liaison Committee Constitution and Orders of Reference to consider the report of the Chief Executive, which can be found on pages 145 through to 150. Councillor Min.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, just to give you a little bit of background, the constitution of the committee requires an addition to it, which will really help the committee through the chair, which is Councillor David Jones, to question a resident or an elected member as to their non-attendance, because obviously, you know, what we're finding is there's not always quorum, it's not always a full representation, mainly of members of the public who are aligned to this particular committee. But also to elected members as well. And so where I mention that, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make just one slight amendment to the recommendation, and that is that at 2.1, Council agrees to the inclusion of a new condition in the Phosphorus Liaison Committee's constitution and orders of reference relating to non-attendance of resident and elected members as outlined at 4.1 below. That therefore helps the chair then, Councillor Jones, to be able to question the representation of both members of the public and elected members as well, and so I move.
No motion.
Do you have any questions? No? Any comments? Councillor Colburn.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I'd just like to agree with Councillor Mitten there that I think it's important that elected members are held to the same accountability standards as the residents. So it shouldn't be one rule for us and one for them. We should all be exactly the same in this.
Councillor Roberts.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. There's currently no method for removing people from the panel despite non-attendance. This proposal will allow the committee to remove and replace non-attending members, so fully support that.
Any further comments? No? And can we put it to the vote then, please? Thank you, everyone. That vote's been carried. Everyone back? Yeah, lovely. Next item on the agenda, agenda item number 10, is an information report only for the Independent Remuneration Panel for Wales Report 2018-19. Information report number 11, Parliamentary Review of Health and Social Care in Wales, to receive the report of the Chief Officer. Any other business? I'll take over to the leader, please.
Yes, I'd just like, I'm sure everybody will join me here and look to congratulate Merthyr Rugby Football Club on their success in the weekend in winning the Welsh Cup.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you, Leader. I do have a couple of any other businesses myself. This year, Fostering Fortnight takes place between the 14th and the 27th of May, and is an excellent opportunity to celebrate the outstanding work of our Merthyr Tydfil foster carers. They are our community's heroes and play a significant role in changing the lives of Merthyr Tydfil's most vulnerable young people. Merthyr Tydfil children and young people need more Merthyr Tydfil foster carers, and during Fostering Fortnight, our fostering team will be raising awareness of this. This will include an information event being held in every ward in the county borough. Details of these will be emailed at the end of this week, and your support in raising awareness of them amongst your constituents and contacts would be appreciated. If you have any questions on this, please contact the fostering team or Beth Meluish in Corporate Communications. So, thank you very much on that. Before you leave, you will all have seen on your chairs the information security policy. I'd be grateful if you could all sign this and hand it to Beth on your way out. And finally, for those who have not yet confirmed whether or not you'll be attending the Mayor's inauguration, please could you do so by contacting Jane Overbury by Friday, the 4th of May at the very latest. Thank you very much, Diolch yn fawr. I do not have any other communications. So, diolch yn fawr. Thank you.